Very good morning. My name is Malcolm Grahamwood and welcome to another Core Finance TV CEO interview. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Ed Story, who is CEO and President of SOCO International. Good morning and welcome.
Morning, Malcolm.
Great to see you.
Good
Thanks
to be
for
here.
coming along. First of all, as I always do, perhaps if you could give us an overview of SOCO as a business in its totality, and then we'll drill down a little deeper after that.
So I began, as many in my industry did, in a major oil company and then evolved to companies where I owned some of it. And in the early 90s, I formed SOCO International as a venture between myself and an independent U.S. oil and gas company. So in the early 90s, we went to Russia, to other unusual places, Yemen and Mongolia. And then we bought a control position in a public Australian company called Command Petroleum. Right. We then took Command to India and to Bangladesh, and that was where I first met Mike Watts, who was one of our managing directors. We then sold that company to Cairn Energy, and we had invested about $30 million, and it returned about $180 million in a couple-year time period, so it was quite good. That was in 96, and then in 97 we listed in London in May of 97 with assets in Russia, Yemen, Tunisia, exploration in Mongolia, and an idea about Vietnam. Only an idea at that phase. And since that time we have sold all of those assets with the exception of Vietnam. And in the course of that we've returned $500 million to our shareholders. So today, within the past year and a half, Mike Watts has joined SOCO as a managing director, as I mentioned, and Jan Brown, who was the chief financial officer of Cairn. So I've had historically a long relationship with Cairn Energy on their board, Cairn India, and even Vedanta today. So India's deep in our DNA, but Mike and Jan and I have worked together as a team for a long time.
Yeah. Let's sort of have a little look at Vietnam. Historically the core assets, you say, being given you the reason to be able to distribute big dividends and so on. And so give us some detail about Vietnam and where it lies within the portfolio at this day and age.
So we have two fields in Vietnam where we are a member of a joint operating company. And actually I created that concept of a joint operating company to be able to acquire the assets rather than a major oil and gas company. So we chose to involve the Vietnamese from the beginning, and both have been very successful projects. There are different types of fields. They're on either side of the largest field in Vietnam. And in the Tejak Chang, the TGT field, we've produced on the order of 90 billion barrels to date. Huge more remaining to produce. Very attractive economics, very attractive cash flow, and the field and the production levels are a function of drilling.
Yeah.
So if you drill wells, you produce more.
Yeah.
If you don't, you defer to later.
And so you're still investing in production?
Absolutely. So we go through a period where the Vietnamese are not in a position to join in the drilling because they have to pay their share, and they have a say in what you do. So therefore, this year, timing-wise, we were deferred some of the drilling activity, which will pick up the latter part of this year and on into next year. So we've had a delegation of the Vietnamese here in London the past Friday and Monday, and their chairman, and we've gone through great detail why this is in their incentive to accelerate and drill more wells. So we see a change in the whole outlook in terms of Vietnamese activities. And I'll be there again at the end of the month to review it further.
But the bottom line is going to remain a key part of SOCO for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. So it's very lucrative production. We receive Brent plus $4 to $5 a barrel in the price. So if Brent's in the mid-80s, you can guess what that price is.
Yeah.
And on the downside, in a low oil price environment, it washes its face at $30 a barrel.
Don't get many better than that.
No.
Okay, obviously wishing to do some diversification, and I know that a lot of people, myself included, when Jan and Mike came on the board, it gave the impression that not just for historical reasons, but you wanted to expand the business. And you announced last couple of weeks that you made this major acquisition in Egypt. So I'd like to go through that a bit. Why Egypt, this particular acquisition, what the upside is, all those sort of things.
So and I know everybody's been waiting for something, and this is it. So
Yeah.
I've had a historical relationship to Egypt, so I just didn't pick it randomly. There was a company called Phoenix Resources, and they used some technical development people that were friends of mine. In fact, we used in other places, and I knew the management. So the Phoenix Resources fundamentally discovered the whole concept of the Western Desert,
Right.
exploration and development in Egypt. Phoenix was sold to Apache, and Apache is the dominant force in the Western Desert. It works. So then the son of Phoenix, if you will, was Merlin. And so Merlin, the former CEO of Phoenix, and a young fella, and the same technical advisors put it together. And it was funded by private equity. And at the end of the day, the private equity guys were happy. Prior to the Arab Spring, they had a process, and they found a buyer for $420 million for Merlin. Then the project didn't sell because it was an NOC. They had to buy a U.S. company. Then comes the Arab Spring. Therefore, it's all on hold for a period of time. So the process, again, was started in June, and I was amazed. I knew these people, and it was like coming home.
Yeah.
And we talked about structure. They wanted a formal process because Yorktown was the financial advisors, and they put together the funding, and they had their own responsibilities to their investors. So they had an auction process, and we were advised we were not the higher bidder, but that they would prefer to have a component of equity in the transaction. So the management wanted to stay. We knew some of the management. We wanted them to stay, and that was the combination. So that's how it sorted out.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting because it gives you all the things that it put it this way, it de-risks the acquisition in quite a big way because they're keeping your stock and your paper, and they're working for you or with you again.
Yes.
Egypt has become a very popular postcode in the last 2 or 3 years. I've spoken to a number of people who've made acquisitions in the area and are looking to expand. So you found obviously something. What is it that makes you excited about Egypt in particular, and this acquisition in terms of the upside and so on?
So I think for Egypt as a country, it's the first day, if you will, of tomorrow for them. Because if you'll step back and look, there have been dramatic changes in a very short period of time. So first of all, Eni found a massive gas deposit offshore. Secondly, Shell announced a $1 billion program coming into Egypt together with a partner. And so the majors are jumping back in. So if you're the day before the majors jump in, the timing is perfect. But from the standpoint of the IMF and the funding and the issues over collectability, all of that is being resolved and significantly resolved in a short period of time. So we see potential for consolidation in Egypt. We see in Merlin very attractive cash flow. So this is accretive as a transaction, which is quite rare. We see a huge number of growth opportunities within their existing portfolio, and we see an exploration component, a very low-cost exploration component that could be massive. So the Western Desert, the Merlin experience, as well as the Apache experience, is an exploration success ratio in excess of 50%. So currently, the producing development wells, they drill the well for $1 million and complete them for less than $1 million. So it's immediate cash flow. We see a significant inventory of development opportunities within the portfolio, and then we see contingent resources that we can move over into production. So there's one rig running there now, and then once this is closed, approved by government, we'll add a second rig and move on and add as many as 2 more rigs.
And there's no shortage of rigs in country?
They're in country. It's an Egyptian business. You can pay in Egyptian currency for them, so you solve some of the convertibility questions. And they're low cost, and good.
So it sounds like when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, they'll be making other acquisitions in Egypt. But this sounds like such a potentially big operation that for the time being, this is Egypt for you, or do you still keep an eye on other
I wouldn't
things?
preclude anything.
Yeah.
But at least, so this entity in Egypt produces 7,000 barrels a day, more or less. So that's significant growth in its own right, and it's accretive as we go forward.
So you funded this. You mentioned earlier with some shares and some cash.
Yes.
Just could you break down the?
So the share component was less than 20%, and the remainder cash. So we have historically carried a very large cash position, which is not the most efficient way to run a balance sheet.
Yeah.
But even today, we're 137 million in cash.
Yeah.
And we funded this with a $215 million reserve-based lending facility based on the Vietnam reserves, which can be expanded once the Merlin reserves are there and could be tailored to fit another acquisition if we like.
So it leaves you, I'm not saying it leaves you in such a strong position.
Yes.
I mean, you've always been in a strong position because historically I've covered this company for many years. And as you say, in the past, if anything, you had to pay off, you paid off big extra one-off dividends and everything else. But even after this acquisition, you're in a very strong position. Just before we go away from the acquisition, the funding, everything else, I'll come back to funding in a second. But does that mean that you might still be looking? Obviously, you've mentioned about looking at other things in Egypt potentially. Are you looking at other countries or?
So one of the things that we lacked a good organizational structure in that part of the region.
Right.
So we would rather look at opportunities that we know the people going in, they're our people, and we can supplement other organizations or staff it with part of this. So that organization would give us expansion possibilities in the Middle East, North African region, and we lacked that before. By the same token, if there were an opportunity within Egypt, then that's something we could consider readily.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, it's an expansion opportunity, but it's also one to grow their own existing assets.
Your North Africa or Greater to Mediterranean base in Egypt. And I mean, there's been so much activity all the way from Morocco, obviously Egypt, and we're seeing a lot of activity in that part of the world. So, you seem to be going in at a very interesting time.
And it's, we were in North Africa, we were in Tunisia for many years, we were in Oman in a different life, we were in Yemen, so we're not going to Yemen. But I'm saying it's an area with which we have familiarity.
Yeah. Just to finish off the funding bit, if you could just give me you said you've got cash there. Vietnam presumably still throws off cash even though you need to keep investing in it.
Absolutely.
The group is comfortably financed now and then going forward giving you all the options, yeah?
So indeed, so at these or even lower oil price levels, I mean, it's hugely cash generative. The acquisition, the Merlin acquisition is accretive. So I think at the end of the day, what we're saying is that we will be able to maintain the per share level of dividend payout that we've done in the past, which has been 5.25p dividend per share, which yields about 6% today.
I know, that was my next question. So you've sort of answered it already. So the dividend is, I mean, whatever happens, because you've not only got the existing cash generative position, but in Egypt it's also cash generating and more cash generating in due course. There's no doubt that you'll continue to pay that dividend for the foreseeable future.
My wife would be very unhappy if we stopped the dividend. And I do think that's a difference in that we're all significant shareholders.
Yeah.
And we view this as if it were our money. Yeah. So we have been very slow, some would say, in doing an acquisition. But if you're spending your own, don't be in a hurry.
No, exactly.
But we see it as a very unusual situation where you can maintain a predictable return of capital to your shareholders, have assured growth in production going forward, and then have opportunity for other expansion.
It sounds perfect, and to me, it adds, the North African piece adds significant credibility to the business for you with another area and in North Africa itself. So I'm extremely positive about that. We've mentioned Jan and Mike. I met your CFO in the office a little while ago. Tell me about your your management team and who you've got on the ground. And
So
forth.
I mentioned to the Merlon people, I said, we function as a unit, the three of us, and we've known each other for quite a long time, and the skill set blending of Jan and Mike is more than 2 + 2 + whatever.
I mean,
it's a perfect combination, well seasoned, well understood. Each of us, one can speak and say, this is the way it is, and everyone has already thought through it, and we're in agreement. So it's a great team, and obviously there is your succession in those two people.
Well, it was great to come to the office and when you weren't there, just and see the team working together and see Jan.
Hopefully that time there will diminish over time and the need for it.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is that, there had been a thought for a while that because it had taken a while to get this deal done, that people were saying, as he brought these guys in, and they haven't found anything, or they're too picky on price, or whatever it is. But it was it's proven right in the end, and it means that as you say, the team is very much set fair going forward, and in other acquisitions as well. So very strong position.
There will be more to come, but they will be done prudently, and it took a long time because we were involved in one specific opportunity that was quite large, but it wasn't quite right. So if it's not quite right, don't do it.
No, absolutely. And I mean, this acquisition has fallen into your hands because there was the people.
Yes.
The people that you had known already, and the people who were doing it on the ground. And I think that I hadn't realised it quite. I knew that there was a Cairn connection. But it's great to see that you're going all the way back to where you started.
Yes.
Yeah. So the vision, before I get to the final question, the vision for now is to make sure that Vietnam keeps working with investment, North Africa with investment, and so on. Bed that down and so on.
Yes.
And that's how you see it at the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Merlin will have the offering, the circular for the combination toward the end of the month. It should close in November, and then hopefully we'll have the government approval soon thereafter, and we're to work assimilating that organization operation into this. In the meantime, we'll consider other ideas and opportunities.
That sounds great. As always, the time runs very, very quickly. I always like to come back to my final question, which is always the same, but it's an important one because I like the investors who are watching and the shareholders to say. So where would you like to see SOCO in 12 to 18 months' time, given everything you've told me today? It's pretty obvious where you'd like to see it in the plans and everything else. Just give us a quick sort of heads up on that.
So this transaction doubles production, doubles reserves, doubles the size of the company. It hasn't doubled the market capitalization because we need to explain it and have everyone understand it. But I'd like to have another double or so before that period.
That sounds great to me. Ed, it's been great to see you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed for watching today. I've been Malcolm Grahamwood on the CEO interview at Core TV Finance. My guest has been Ed Story, CEO and President of SOCO International, and it was great to see you. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks very much, and bye-bye.